Hey, it's Jordan. Delighted to be joined by Stephen Donziger, a human rights attorney who has unfortunately, between house arrest and actual imprisonment, and now back under house arrest, altogether over 900 days, you have been under house arrest or imprisoned for what has just come out. Legal experts have said is essentially a violation of human rights and your legal rights. I wanted to start because there's breaking news, and you tweeted it out that in a 57-page report, panel of prominent lawyers conclude that Judge Lewis Kaplan and Judge Loretta Preska, who are the two judges that have been involved in your case, denied you a fair trial and illegally detained me. They demand the U.S. government free me immediately and investigate the judges. I just want to read, I'm not going to read the whole report, but just this part. The panel has determined that the conduct of judges and prosecutors in Stephen Donziger's case has led to numerous and serious violations of his rights with respect to liberty, arbitrary detention, and fair trials under international human rights law. In particular, Articles 9 and 14 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, ratified by the United States in 1992. The panel has recommended that by way of remedy, he be immediately released from custody and be compensated for the violations he has experienced. I haven't had a chance to read this whole thing. I kind of skimmed the first few pages. Can you talk about the significance of this report and what these experts found?
Thank you, Jordan. It's always good to see you. Essentially what happened to me is after I'm a human rights lawyer, I help indigenous peoples in Ecuador win a $9.5 billion pollution judgment against Chevron. Rather than pay the judgment and comply with the law, and that judgment has been affirmed by 6 different appellate courts, including the Supreme Courts of Ecuador and Canada, rather than pay it, Chevron went after me. And they convinced a U.S. judge to essentially lock me up for nothing. They made up an allegation that I owed them money for court costs. They demanded to see my computer when I couldn't pay the money. It was an exorbitant amount of money, $800,000. And Kaplan, this U.S. judge, ordered me to turn over my computer to Chevron. I appealed the order, and he charged me with criminal contempt of court for appealing an illegal order. Subsequent to that, he took his charges to the U.S. attorney here in Manhattan. He refused to prosecute me. Then Judge Kaplan appointed a private Chevron law firm to prosecute me, which is unprecedented in U.S. history, the first corporate prosecution. And then he, ignored local court rules and appointed a close colleague, a member of the Federalist Society, which Chevron funds, to preside over the case. Her name was Loretta Preska. And ultimately, she locked me up, claiming I was some sort of risk of flight. I was going to leave the country, leave behind my family, my wife, my son, which was totally preposterous. But on that basis, and because of COVID, my trial kept getting delayed. I was here for 25 months before I even had a trial on a case where the maximum sentence were I to be convicted is only 6 months. It's a misdemeanor. So this was pure punishment and retaliation by 2 Chevron-linked judges and a Chevron law firm that took over the public machinery of the prosecutorial function, privatized it, and attacked Chevron's biggest critic in an effort to silence me. And I paid a very heavy price. As you mentioned, I've been in detention for over 900 days. It ends on April 25th, another 3 months, which is ridiculous. So this report that you referred to is very significant. It's an objective analysis of what happened to me by very prominent international jurists, including Stephen Rapp, who was former U.S. ambassador and is a major prosecutor in the International Criminal Court against atrocity crimes, highly respected. And Catherine Morris, who runs an organization in Canada. She's a lawyer. It's called Lawyers Watch Canada, where they monitor attacks on lawyers all over the world, among others. They attended the trial, reviewed the entire transcript, and concluded that it was basically a farce, that Judge Preska and Judge Kaplan, who appointed her, violated my right to a fair trial. They detained me illegally. And these jurists have demanded that the United States government not only release me immediately, but pay me compensation and also launch an independent investigation into Judges Kaplan and Preska to determine how this could have happened. How do you have a corporate-controlled private prosecution of a human rights lawyer anywhere, much less in the United States of America. So this report is significant. It confirms what we've been saying for a long time, and it confirms it from very respected outside observers who who understand how trials are supposed to work and who have concluded that what happened to me is a massive violation of multiple provisions of international law that the United States is obligated to comply with based on this treaty that the United States signed in 1992, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. So, I'm thrilled with the issuance of this report. It's 57 pages, it's detailed, it's professional, it's deep. And anyone who wants to understand the horror of what happened to me, that I'm essentially a political prisoner, corporate political prisoner in my own apartment, should read this report. And you can find it, by the way, on my Twitter feed right now. It's at @SDonziger.
And what's incredible to me is typically, I mean, you're a lawyer, correct me if I'm wrong. Typically, there's kind of standards that if there is even an appearance of a conflict, judges would recuse themselves, or certain prosecutors might not be prosecuting a case. But here you have multiple conflicts. The judges had tied to the Federalist Society, which Chevron has given plenty of money to, and the prosecutor Rita Glavin, who's been prosecuting you on behalf of the U.S. government, but she's a private attorney. Her firm, like you said, has ties to Chevron. So wouldn't, under normal circumstances, those be red flags for those people and those judges or prosecutors to not be involved with your case?
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, the case never should have been brought. No lawyer in American history, other than me in this one case, has ever been charged with criminal contempt of court for appealing a civil discovery order. I mean, I was representing my clients against this unprecedented order by Kaplan that I turned my computer over to Chevron, including all the privileged information. So I had an ethical obligation to adhere to the law and not turn it over and appeal it, because in my view, it was and is an illegal order. And I was vindicated on my appeal, by the way, but it didn't change the fact that he still charged me criminally. So normally, if the U.S. attorney declines to prosecute a charge, it's the end of story. So the fact that Kaplan appointed a private prosecutor is outrageous. The fact he appointed a Chevron lawyer as the private prosecutor is even more outrageous. And the fact he appointed a Chevron-linked judge, Judge Preska, makes it even worse. None of that should have happened. So, in a normal case, it wouldn't have happened. In a normal case, had even one of those things happen, it would have been reversed or changed very quickly to get a neutral judge or a neutral prosecutor. It's very telling the Department of Justice declined to prosecute. There's no case here. Yet I'm sitting here for over 900 days in my home with an ankle bracelet because Chevron and its allies, Rita Glavin among them, manipulated the judicial system to target me because of my human rights work. So it's scary. And it really, again, it's the first corporate prosecution. I really hope it's the last. And I think more and more people need to pay attention to this to be sure it never happens again.
And it should be noted, by the way, on top of this new report, that is on behalf of an independent panel of experts, a UN panel, a United Nations panel of judges, international, had basically come up with the same conclusion, that this was an illegal prosecution and that you should have, reimbursement and be freed. So this is now the second time you have a panel, first the United Nations and now this group of experts claiming this. I wanted to also bring up, and this, I don't know, follow the money here, but you've also been pointing out that the judges will not release basic financial information about, or not provide to you and your attorneys basic financial information about Rita Glavin, the prosecutor, as far as her billing, how much she is billing to which clients, because that billing, and I'd love you to explain this, is being funded by us, the taxpayers.
Well, that's an important point. So, in a normal prosecution, the taxpayers fund the prosecutor's office and the lawyers work for a salary and they do their jobs and ideally, or theoretically, at least in the public interest. What happened here is, since that office wouldn't do the case because it's worthless, Judge Kaplan appointed a private lawyer and he agreed to pay her out of a taxpayer funded court fund $300 an hour, not just her, but two other lawyers who work with her. And she's proceeded to hide her invoices. I mean, she did release some that show payments of about $670,000 by taxpayers to illegally detain me, prosecute me. But there's several months of invoices missing. Her fees clearly are well over $1 million. By the way, a normal misdemeanor case takes all of about $2,000 or $3,000 to prosecute. I mean, it's usually a very, very minor thing. And she's in, she and Chevron, I might add, because she's doing this for Chevron's interests, are enriching themselves at taxpayer expense by committing human rights violations by locking me up, according to both the UN jurists, 5 respected jurists who work for the United Nations, and separately now this latest report from 4 other highly respected jurists. So there's 9 jurists that have independently assessed this case and concluded that it's a massive human rights violation, and Glavin's billed U.S. taxpayers over $1 million to commit what I would call a horrendous act, in theory on behalf of the U.S. government, but she was really doing it on behalf of Chevron. So we're demanding all those invoices be released.
And I just want to drill down so the audience understands. So the actual U.S. government, a federal prosecutor, declined to take this case. Just say, for whatever reason, just didn't feel it was worth prosecuting, or there wasn't a case here. So the actual U.S. government chose not to prosecute you, and the judge outsources it on behalf of the United States government, which technically is legal, but it's very unusual, to this Chevron-linked law firm, and they are being paid by a taxpayer-funded court fund. Do I have that right?
Yeah, but I mean, not just paid exorbitant amounts. And, look, what Judge Kaplan did in appointing a private prosecutor is just wrong. There are rare circumstances in our legal system where you can appoint a private prosecutor, but it's only when the normal prosecutor has a conflict of interest. There was no such conflict here. They looked at the case, assessed it, turned it down. Should have been end of story. A judge can't then go appoint a private lawyer, much less one with a conflict of interest that works for Chevron, to go after the lawyer that beat Chevron in court in a civil case. That's crazy. And the fact that Glavin and Kaplan are bilking taxpayers over $1 million to do this makes it all the more reprehensible, in my view.
Mm-hmm. And the other element also is what the invoices that you have been provided, does it, besides the exorbitant costs that they're making, does it show the exorbitant fees that they're making? Does it show anything else that raises red flags, or do you suspect the records they're not providing, that there might be stuff in there that they don't want you to know?
Well, first of all, the bills they provide that have the numbers redact, that is, they erase all the descriptions of what they were doing. And we know for a fact they were working very closely with Chevron lawyers. In other words, that was one Chevron law firm that was being paid to prosecute me, working with a second Chevron law firm being paid directly by Chevron millions of dollars to force or to spoon feed all the information to the first Chevron lawyer prosecutor to do the case. And 4 Chevron lawyers from the second law firm were her witnesses. They met with the FBI. I mean, there were hundreds of hours of meetings. There was millions of dollars of time. I mean, Chevron did the case. They financed this entire case by paying their own lawyers to help the taxpayer-funded, conflicted private Chevron prosecutor. We know that happened. We don't know any of the details because Judge Preska, who again has ties to Chevron, has refused multiple requests by my lawyers, Marty Garbus and Ron Kuby, to get discovery to figure out exactly how deep this corruption scandal runs. And Judge Preska has refused to allow us discovery. So, it's all in the dark. It's obvious Judge Preska was trying to protect the Chevron prosecutor. And there was a collusion that took place between Judges Kaplan and Preska, to prevent us from accessing the information that would have completely exposed this. That said, we do have a fair amount of information anyway. And what we do have points to a very sordid tale of conflicts and human rights violations targeting an American lawyer orchestrated by a big oil company that he helped his clients hold accountable.
Well, also, I mean, to me, just as a journalist, the private prosecutor communicating with Chevron about your case, I mean, maybe there would be certain things technically that they would have to interview Chevron on, but separate communications with Chevron, that stinks to the high hells. Why,
Oh,
you know?
it's ridiculous. I mean, it's preposterous. It's not independent, and it's not disinterested. Public prosecutors are required by law to be disinterested. That is, they have no interest or financial or otherwise in the outcome of any case they're prosecuting. I mean, she was making money and war firm that had Chevron as a client. So obviously she was not disinterested, and she never should have been appointed. Once appointed, she should have quit when she realized the extent of it. So again, this was all a collusive effort by Chevron and others, including two judges and this lawyer, Rita Glavin, to try to target me and silence me and make me suffer through this prolonged period of arbitrary detention that violates international law right here on U.S. soil, I might add. I'm in New York City. So this is very disturbing on a lot of levels. It goes way beyond me. You know, obviously it hurts me and my family, my wife and son, but it also hurts our country and hurts civil society. I mean, the idea that they could get away with this new kind of corporate fossil fuel playbook to go after activists and lawyers is scary, and we can't let them get away with it. And that's why I'm out here speaking out, by the way. I mean, a lot of people in my position, lawyers would advise them to just lay low, but I'm not laying low. I'm speaking out because if I don't, nobody will even know this is happening.
And also, we should point out, and this brings me to the next thing. I mean, there have been Congress members that have spoken out on your behalf, asked Merrick Garland to retake this case, essentially to drop it. I believe at least 8 or 9 House members have spoken out on your behalf. And the Biden administration and Merrick Garland have not only ignored it, but they just nominated an attorney that has been from Gibson Dunn, which has been part of the political crusade against you. This attorney, Jennifer Reardon, they just nominated her as a judge. So could you talk about her in particular? Because she's had a long corporate career, and part of that was going after you.
Yeah. So she's a partner at Gibson, Dunn and Crutcher, which is Chevron's main law firm. They billed Chevron hundreds of millions of dollars over the last several years to attack me and the Ecuadorian communities that won the case against Chevron. She's a partner there. She's worked on the case. She's enriched herself off of attacking me. And, you know, they represent major oil interests, fossil fuel interests, some pretty nefarious actors in our society. So I don't really understand what President Biden was thinking in appointing a big oil lawyer to the federal bench when the planet is burning and he purports to, you know, have a climate plan. So, you know, I think it's outrageous. I think the nomination should be withdrawn. Remember the name Jennifer Reardon. You know, the weird part, particularly weird part, is Donald Trump had appointed her as a judge. She never made it through for various logistical reasons. And Joe Biden reappoints a Trump-appointed judge who was, you know, partly responsible for jailing me and attacking indigenous peoples in the Amazon who have been poisoned by her client Chevron. She should not be on the bench. And I'm calling on President Biden not only to make sure his attorney general releases me, but to also withdraw her nomination.
And I want to circle back because the breaking news that came out today with this 57-page report among a panel of experts saying that you need to be released and restitution and saying that this has been an illegal prosecution against you. I wanted to ask you legally, what is the mechanism for investigating judges? Let's say in a perfect world tomorrow, powers that be agreed with this report and said we need to investigate from start to finish this whole process. Who would do the investigation of Judge Lewis Kaplan, Judge Loretta Preska, if that ball was set in motion?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it has to come from some U.S. government authority. It could be the Department of Justice, could be Congress. I mean, Congress has the right to impeach judges, federal judges. You know, it could be the judiciary itself, although that almost never happens because judges generally protect judges, you know. So the sad part is there's very little accountability for lifetime appointed federal judges in this country. I mean, you know, I find Congress to be really scared to look at it due to separation of powers issues. And judges have steadily accumulated more and more power with virtually no accountability. But there are multiple entities that could investigate and should investigate. And I would start with the Congress, but also the Department of Justice.
Absolutely. And I just want to bring it back to what Chevron has tried to distract from, and that's the people of Ecuador. That's really what this is all about. What they're doing is to try and change the topic away from what Texaco did at the time, and Chevron absorbed Texaco, and that's poisoning indigenous people in Ecuador, dumping billions in waste in their waterways. Can you kind of talk about today? It's not like this thing was just cleaned up and everybody's been compensated. The indigenous people of Ecuador have not seen that $9.5 billion settlement that Chevron has refused to pay. Where do things stand in Ecuador, not only with cleanup, but restitution and the health problems that the indigenous people there are suffering from?
Well, on a human level, it's horrendous. I mean, thousands of people have died of cancers and other oil-related diseases due to exposures to Chevron's dumping. Chevron dumped literally billions of gallons of benzene-laden, cancer-causing oil waste onto indigenous ancestral lands, including into rivers and streams that the local communities relied on for their drinking water, their bathing, and their fishing. Okay, so many people have died. Many more people will die if nothing is done quickly. And Chevron has refused to pay a penny. In contrast, BP for the Deepwater Horizon spill in the Gulf of Mexico has paid almost $70 billion. And that was a much less impactful spill, and that was an accident. What Chevron did was intentional. They deliberately polluted to save money in Ecuador. So the people are hurting. The health problems are getting worse. Tens of thousands of people are affected. It's a humanitarian catastrophe. It's called the Amazon Chernobyl for a reason. And it's the world's worst oil-related problem on Earth. And it was done deliberately by Chevron, an American company. They've yet to pay a single penny or dollar to the people they poisoned and harmed, despite multiple court judgments that they do so. I think Chevron's license to operate should be revoked until they meet their responsibilities with legal and ethical to the people they harmed in Ecuador, including indigenous groups that are trying to stave off extinction because their lands and their waterways and their traditional way of life no longer works properly because Chevron went in and in a few short years poisoned the heck out of it after they had lived prosperously for millennia. So it's a horrendous problem on a humanitarian level, on a human level. And Chevron, to me, should be regarded as a completely rogue company until they start meeting their legal responsibilities to people who are harmed by their pollution.
And lastly, it's a dumb question, but one I should ask: how are you holding up? I mean, it's obviously better not to be in federal prison, but you're still under house arrest. This is over 900 days. You're almost there in April. Hopefully, you're released before then. But just how are you holding up, still being under house arrest?
It's tough, but I'm holding up. I'm continuing to work to the extent that I can. And I look forward to April 25th, if not sooner. By the way, the federal appellate court in New York has my appeal pending. They have the power right now to reverse this preposterous corporate prosecution, and they should. And if they do that, I'll be released once that happens. But they've been sitting on the case since it was argued way back at the end of November. So I don't know why it's taking them so long. I would urge those judges to take these issues seriously and to try to rule as soon as possible, because I'm in detention. Even though I'm home, I'm not free. I can't go out. I have an ankle bracelet again. And, I haven't been able to travel in almost 3 years, either to see my clients in Ecuador or to organize some other activities on behalf of them. So needs to change, but I'm doing well. And I have a lot of support around the world, including from Nobel laureates and independent journalists like you and others, my family, Laura, my wife, Laura, my son, Matthew, and just so many bar associations and, human rights groups like Amnesty International, Global Witness, Amazon Watch. I feel very fortunate to have the support. The solidarity helps me a lot. I get letters from all over the world, but it doesn't change the fact that I'm not free. And my deprivation of freedom is now determined to be a violation of the law, and the United States needs to deal with that and release me immediately.
And I don't know if you know this, but kind of ironic. April 25th, when you'll be released, is the 8-year anniversary of the Flint water crisis and that poisoning. So, separate story, but it's interesting that it's the same date. Also, want to give a plug where people can support you.
Please go to the website freedonziger.com. Free, and my name is DONZIGER.com. Learn all about the case. You can donate. We have a legal defense fund. We need financial resources to deal with this monster that's attacking me and the people of Ecuador. So if you can donate even small amounts, please do so. More importantly, give us your email so you can sign up to our campaign and receive regular notes about what's going on. And you can help us with writing letters to Congress, to Merrick Garland, to Joe Biden, or whoever the case may be. So again, the website is freedonziger.com. Please sign up if you can and join our campaign, which we're trying to really turn into a movement for human rights action against fossil fuel companies.
Thank you, Stephen Donziger. We'll stay on it.
Thanks so much, Jordan. I really appreciate it.